friends, okay, so I just went to HEB, got all of the millions of pumpkins that I could ever want in my entire life. It was absolutely a fun time. I was a little bit overwhelmed, but in the best possible way. Like, there were just so many good options. So I did get some beautiful, wonderful, stunning, amazing pumpkins and 2 mums, and it ended up being like $85. Just throwing that out there. They had a 20% off coupon, and I spent near as much money as I was expecting to spend, so that is a win. However, my cart is currently stacked so aggressively full, mostly because most of these pumpkins are going to my mom. I'm gonna do like a little mini road trip situation, go meet her, finally pick up my dogs, because this last weekend I had book club, and she was very gracious enough to babysit the dogs for me because they're a little crazy when it comes to people. So we're gonna go get the boys, but then we are going to, on this little 45-minute drive, we're gonna go ahead and start Enchantment of Ravens, the way that I could not remember what the name of that book was, even though I'm literally like 2% of the way into it already. First and foremost, I picked up the audiobook for this a couple days ago, and I was kind of wondering if I should potentially read this physically, because it sounded like this girl is so not really jaded, but like disenchanted with the whole world that she's currently living in. She has all these moments where she is not really funny, but like kind of quippy, but like really dry, sarcastic, unexpectedly sarcastic, and some of the lines are just hitting so good. And I have some really good feelings about this book, even though I'm a literal like 2% of the way in. I just have a good feeling, and I think that's good because I was gonna say was, but technically still am in a bit of a reading slump. So I feel like this book is going to be not only all of the fall feels, but also maybe do some good things to me personally in this moment. Anywhoosins, I just got gas. I just got my car inspected. I called my dad and he reminded me that my car inspection was due this month, so I managed to drive by the Take 5. So I got that done real quick. I am about to hit the road. It's going to be a fantastic day. It's currently Saturday. I spent all of today in bed, and it was kind of a glorious time. Now it's time to get out and see the world. Also, I kind of just miss my dogs. It's been a week without them, and I feel like every time, like, I'm so used to just a little bit of noise here and there because of the dogs. We're gonna go pick up my dogs. We're going to go take all this stuff back to my mom, give my mom some pumpkins, and we're going to have a fantastic little evening ahead of us. I'm so excited about this book. Okay, that's all. Roll out. I have a feeling that by the time I get back, it is going to be very dark outside, and I'm just feeling like this is going to be all of the good spooky fall vibes that we could be wanting. So let's go. They don't give a rat's hoo-ha about me. Hello friends, we have some updates, if you couldn't tell by the giant stack of books in front of me. First and foremost, I finished Enchantment of Ravens. I'm gonna attempt to halfway kind of semi-sort of get ready, and then we've got some other things to talk about. Here's the thing. Where do I want to start? Let's Enchantment of Ravens first, and then we'll get into the things that we're here to talk about. Okay, Enchantment of Ravens. It's good. Okay. I do feel like this is a seasonal read for me. I don't know that, like, if I would have read it during any other time of year that I would have liked it really have as much as I do. And I also, to an extent, it's a seasonal fall read. Okay, I think I'm gonna put it as a 4 on Goodreads, but ultimately it was a 3.5. If this book was not, like, if it wasn't currently fall, I probably would have given it 3. I just feel like it's not as, like, I don't know, that feels brutal too. If you were a fan of The Cruel Prince and you want something that's kind of the same kind of fae, it gives similar vibes in the fact that, like, it's fairies, fae, and they're all different kinds of creature varieties. They've all got something going on. The fae in this world, essentially, they're not, like, allergic to craft, but we're going to say that they're allergic to craft. They can't actually make things as part of their magic. They're kind of stuck letting the humans do all the dirty work for them. So we have our main character who is a portrait artist, and all of the verbiage around her doing these portraits, stunning. So aesthetic and so just, like, timely. Like, I feel like this is such a good fall book. So I am really glad that I read it this time of year. If I were to have not read it during this time of year when I'm specifically looking for like a fall cozy read, I don't know that it's my jam in particular. And I think that as a kind of read isn't necessarily like my number one jam. So I would definitely recommend it if you're into something like that and you're interested in something like that. I just wouldn't necessarily say like if you're someone who likes more, I don't know. I feel like the more books that I read, the more that I'm like, wow, I really do just like really fast paced fun. Like, I'm not someone, I like politics and I like world building, but the second that it starts to drag, I'm out. And if there's nothing that's like super crazy happening and super like drama happening, I'm not necessarily as interested in it. And I feel like this book, why am I doing mascara before concealer? I don't know. But I feel like if there's a romance in this book, I need the romance to be more developed. YA oftentimes don't place as much emphasis on the romance that I want and as much of the relationship building as I want. They just kind of like, ooh, I'm kind of into you. Oh wait, suddenly I'm in love with you. And I feel a bit like part of that I feel like is because I listened to this audiobook, but then the other part of that is like it just genuinely was that. So would I go out of my way to recommend this book to somebody? No. Would I go out of my way to ever reread this? No. But did I enjoy it for what it was? Yeah. So it's kind of like a mixed bag with this one, but so we have some things to talk about, meaning following the experience of this book, I have had this book on my TBR for so long. This and a couple other YA fantasies I have been not really saving on my TBR, but I'd heard such good things about them, I went ahead and bought them. And then I was like, okay, when am I actually going to read these? I heard such good things about them. I saw them in person. I was like, okay, bought. I had this thing, and I talked about this in my unhaul, where for a while I just like didn't have very much stuff to do, and I was bored all of the time. Didn't really have any friends here, and so instead of hanging out with my friends, I would just go like walk around the bookstore, which is coping at its probably not the worst way to cope with loneliness, but like also not necessarily the best. And my physical TBR definitely reflected that. Like, I just wasn't excited by the books that I had on my physical TBR to read. So then I started looking, I found my fall TBR just now, and I was like, really, I want to read those books. I don't want to read these books. I want to read those books. And then Cassidy just uploaded her reading her series, like she did I forget exactly what she called it, but she did a spinner wheel with the series that are currently on her TBR, and she either DNF'd them or she read them. She DNF'd a good chunk of them, and it made me feel so empowered to just DNF and get rid of stuff. A lot of these books I was waiting to specifically read them at a certain time because I'd heard such good things about them, and I was like, oh well, it's fall, well I miss fall, so maybe it'll be this fall. I'm not gonna do that. Let's be realistic here. I'm not going to read half of the books on my physical TBR right now. The more that I was just like, wow, I don't want to read these right now. Like, if I were to compare something like Phantasma, which I'm really wanting to read right now, if I were to compare the want to read level of Phantasma versus the want to read level on most of these books. So I went through my bookshelf and I did that. So there were a couple books specifically on my physical TBR that I was thinking about to read for this vlog. So I was able in a lot of cases to find the audiobooks in either Everand or through my library. So I went ahead and picked up and kind of rapid fire went through a couple of those. First of all, okay, we're going to move this stack to the side for a second. Trust the Emerald Sea, okay? I do have the hardcover situation. I heard such good things about it. I was like, obviously, if I'm going to pay the money for one, I'm going to get the pretty hardcover. They were still available. So I got these, and I was like, it'll give me the ebook with it. I'm going to read on the ebook anyways. Great, cool. Here's the thing. I am going to keep this, and I'm going to read this at a later time. I started listening to the graphic audio, and I was like, I genuinely am just not in the mood for this right now, but I do feel like I would like to read it at some point. However, I'm not in the mood for this audiobook right now. I could see myself potentially either really loving this or really just being so mid about this book. So I do want to keep this one. However, I listened to the audiobook and I'm not going to listen to it right now. I got like 5% of the way through the graphic audio, and I feel like the graphic audio is so interesting on this one. It's very much so storytelling, very much so story time, fairy tale, and I think that was fun. But for now, we're going to move this off to the side. So there is a difference between wanting to read something not right now and just not wanting to really read them at all. I feel like that's a genuine not right now. So I kind of went through this brain process, okay? So then I was like, okay, there's some other things that I specifically wanted to read in the fall. Let's see if I can get a hold of some of those audiobooks. Number 1, The Only Good Indians by Stephen Graham Jones. I've heard some really not good things about this. I've heard some really good things about this. In either case, he actually taught at Texas Tech. He's from Midland. And I just feel like it would be such a fascinating author to read from. I listened to the first, 10%, I could care less, honestly. I think this could potentially be picked for another book club, so I'm gonna go ahead and hold on to it until that book club passes. But if we don't pick this one, I'm gonna unhaul this one. But I just like wasn't really all that interested whenever I actually picked it up. I wasn't grabbed. Like, what's the point? Why would I want to read that over something like Phantasma? Okay. And keep in mind, I've not read Phantasma. It could probably be terrible, but the idea is that like that's the kind of book that I want to read more so than these. So then I went ahead and picked up this audiobook. Now, this audiobook, Enchantment of Ravens, and then Dreams Lie Beneath by Rebecca Ross, I kind of grouped them all together in my head because they're all YA fantasy that I've heard really good things about. Do I really want to read this? I don't know. So I went ahead and picked up the audiobook. I wasn't grabbed. I didn't really care. Is this because I'm in a reading slump? Partially, but is this a type of book that generally I want to listen to? Not really. I had the opportunity to listen to it. I didn't really want to keep listening to it. So like, why am I going to keep this around? So we've kind of made this decision. This morning, I went through my bookshelves and I was like, okay, if I compared this book to something like Phantasma, just like general KU fantasy romance and or a romance novel, like something like, there's an Ashley Poston book I really want to read, a novel love story, I really want to read that book. If I compare the level of want to readness to these, I really don't want to read these. These have been on my bookshelves for like 2 years at this point. I'm not going to read them. Why am I going to keep them? So I'm not going to keep them. We're just gonna unhaul them. I was listening to all these audiobooks. I was like, I don't want to read anything here. You know what? I'm just gonna turn on some YouTube. I'm gonna go get ready for bed, and then I'm gonna see what else I might end up reading. I turned on Cassidy's video. The whole point is she either wanted to read them or she didn't, and she just got rid of them. And she DNF'd a whole bunch. And I was like, listen, this is something I can do. I can DNF. That's a possibility. As someone who's previously not been a good DNFer, this could be me. So it's gonna be me. I think I'm gonna go ahead and unhaul this because I've read it. It was fine, but I don't necessarily need to keep it around. And then somebody else during this fall can get all kinds of enjoyment out of this. Like, it was very seasonal fun. Do I want to reread this? No. Do I want to read this again? No. Do I really need to look at it? No. But somebody else could totally benefit from it. So we're going to unhaul them. So then I started going through my shelves. What other books are like this? I have been here for a while. I just really don't want to read them right now. And I'm probably realistically not going to want to read them. I laughed because a series that Cass hadn't DNF'd. Realistically, I like sci-fi. I read Skyward. It was really silly, goofy fun, and I enjoyed it. However, Starsight was actually on my 23 in 2023, and I never read it. It took me a whole year to not read it, and then it's October of the next year, and I still haven't read it. So what's the likelihood of me actually reading the series? None. Do I need to keep it? No. Vespertine and The Coldest Girl in Cold Town. I got these because they would seem so fall and vibey, but like, do I need this vibe, or do I want to read something like a dark indie fanro? Do I want to read something like Lady of Darkness? I kind of would choose Lady of Darkness over these. So during this fall season, there's only so much time to read so many books. I'm not going to pick these up, but somebody else could. So why am I going to keep them? I'm not gonna. So then last night, I was like, okay, so 23 in 2023, didn't get to that. What's on my 24 in 2024? I haven't looked at that in a little bit. What have I actually not gotten to? You'll see back here, Ruthless Vows. I read Divine Rivals, thought it was kind of okay. I gave it a 4-star. It was good. I can see why so many people liked it, but I wasn't just like obsessed with it. The idea of picking this up, I'm not, so we're gonna unhaul it. Sitting right next to it on my bookshelf. I think I got this. I don't remember when I got this. I think I got this used for super cheap, but I got the whole box set and I was so excited to get to it. Who does she think? No, I'm not. I'd rather read something else on, if I'm being 100% honest. So then right next to that book on my bookshelf, we talked about Dreams Lie Beneath. I had this thing where I wanted to go and read Rebecca Ross's backlist, but she does more slower paced, like prosy, pretty books. That's not necessarily my reading style, so like, We Had the Flame and The Last Magician. Again, I feel like these are two series that I would be kind of interested in, but I'm only kind of interested in them at this point. And if I am interested in them, I could probably get them from the library really pretty easy. I've had this one for, I think, a year. I've had this one for almost 2 years. Have I read them yet? No. Am I really excited to read them right now? No. So we're going to pass them on to somebody else who will be excited to read them. I was really excited about this book. I've seen really good things about Child of Light by Terry Brooks on TikTok. Terry Brooks, you've heard of his name before. I did an accidental thing in which I read the synopsis for book 2. How I ended up with book 2 before I ever actually read book 1, I'm not really sure. I want to say that I got this in the half-price hardcover sale, but here's the thing. I accidentally read the synopsis for this one. The very first sentence of the synopsis, how can I say this without spoiling it? We're gonna unhaul it. I'm genuinely so excited to be unhauling these. We're freeing up so much shelf room, but also so much mental space, because I feel like I don't really want to read all these fun books that just like pop up over here, because I also want to be making sure that I'm reading off of my physical TBR, which is good. However, would I rather read my physical TBR? Do I really want to be making that decision? Like, do I actually really want to read the books that are on my physical TBR? Like, is it me trying to be good and read my physical TBR, or am I genuinely interested in those books? I'm not. So okay, then a couple random books. The Appeal was a Barnes BOGO. It sounds interesting, like it's a mixed media murder mystery kind of thing. Am I actually gonna read it though? Probably not. But I'm gonna. Okay, so hear me out for a second. I bought both of these books because they were on everybody's best of 2022 list, and so I bought them and I was like, oh, I'm gonna like them. I think, how far did I get into Babel, whatever. I got about 100 pages into Babel and I was like, I'm a silly, goofy reader. Was this silly, goofy? Not really. Same thing with this. I know that this has changed a lot of people's lives. My best friend, this is one of her favorite books, but like also, I think I'm okay. Then I went through a little bit of a moment. Second and Charles had these, again, sale. These were both 50% off, so I actually got both of them. I was just texting Sarah and she actually just DNF'd this book. And some of the things that she said about why she DNF'd it, I was like, I'm gonna DNF it too. Like, I know myself at this point, I'm gonna DNF it too. This is book 3 in this series. I have no interest in actually reading the rest of this series. I just finished a Knocking Out series and I was like, ooh, another trilogy by her would be fun to get into, and then I never got into it. And like, also, these are all on KU. If I wanted to read them, why do I need these? I read this specifically for a book club, and I'm not going to continue on with the series. Another YA fantasy. From what I have heard about this is more prosy. I know that the kind of reader that I am, I'm not really going to be as into it. The things that the people love about this book are not necessarily the things that I like in books. So they're there. I've also got like Redeeming Love, Francine Rivers. I wanted to read this for a really long time and I got it for $5, and then I was like, ooh, I have it to read now. I've not read it. So why am I going to keep it? I don't know. I'm not gonna. So we've had a little bit of a little mini, fairly substantial rapid fire unhaul that's happening here that I'm very excited about. I feel like we're freeing up some room. If I keep really desperately wanting to read my physical TBR, maybe I should actually do it. This is kind of me doing it, because at this point I really don't want to read a lot of books on my physical TBR, so we're making really good progress. So now that we have gotten rid of kind of some things, let's talk about moving forward, which I'm very excited about. I had it in my head that I wanted to be filming this video at this point, and then I was like, but I really don't want to read any of the books on my physical TBR, and I want to read all these other things. And now that I've told myself that I don't have to read these books, I'm actually excited to read some of the remaining books on my TBR that I really wanted to get to this fall. So, number 1 of them being Daughter of Smoke and Bone by Laini Taylor. I was working on a reading my favorite author's favorite books vlog, and this book came up so many times. So I went ahead and got the library copy. I got the ebook on Libby, so I started it. I'm like 5% of the way through it. I'm into this at the moment, so I'm curious where this is going to go. Secondly, I keep talking about wanting to reread the series, and I really want to, and then I keep seeing people talk about how they're starting the TV show, and I really want to watch the TV show. So I feel like I'm going to read this book to start the series, and then potentially switch over to this series, maybe. But speaking of magic-y TV shows, I also want to read The Magicians. So we have some books to get through. I also really still want to read The Housemaid. I dug through my physical TBR, could not find this book anywhere. So you're just gonna have to trust me that it's on my physical TBR, but like I did get the Kindle Unlimited version of it. Will I read it in this vlog? We'll find out. However, I'm for sure at least starting this one and hopefully moving into this. We'll see. But this is where we're at currently. We're making some really good progress for the purposes of this video. Finally. Okay, so we're about to run into Second and Charles and get rid of an absolute boatload of books, which is a very exciting feeling because I feel like there is so much space, not only physically, but more mentally, for me to be able to just pick up whatever the heck I want to, whenever the heck I want to, and I feel like I'm actually going to enjoy what I'm reading, as opposed to feeling like halfway guilty because I'm reading this book as opposed to reading something that I like in my brain told myself I was going to read. So this is all very good and very exciting things. We're getting rid of the things that like I genuinely just don't want to read really anytime soon, or much if ever. And if I do want to read it, I can always pick it up from the library. So we're going to go probably get absolutely zero money for these books. However, we're going to actually get them out of my house as opposed to just like leaving them in piles in places in my house. So let's go. friends, we have done some things this week. Not only from the reading perspective, but also from just the general resetting and clearing off perspective. I feel so much better. The amount of better that I feel, the current moment is quite substantial. And I wasn't really anticipating that this week would kind of really clear out and reset my physical TBR in the way that it has, and I'm not mad at it one bit. So this week, we've got some things read. First and foremost, the thing that I'm currently working my way through, I want to say I'm about 25% of the way through this book, and I am absolutely having a great time. However, we are at the end of this week, and I do also have another vlog that I really want to include this in, so we're going to press a pause on this book, but I am really enjoying it so far, and I'm so stinking glad that this book is finally being touched. It's no longer collecting dust with all of the other books on my shelves. It is happening, and I am so stinking excited about it. We also read... What else did we read? There's one book in particular that I'm literally looking at right now, but literally, what else from this week did I read? No, but like, what book did I read? Oh, Enchantment of Ravens. We read an Enchantment of Ravens this week, which has also been absolutely just rotting on my physical TBR. And I'm so glad that not only I finally got it and cleared off my TBR, but I did read it at this time of year. And I actually made sure to read it at this time of year because otherwise it would have continued to sit for another year. And I had a good time with it. I did end up unhauling it, but I am glad that I finally got off of it. And I'm so excited for somebody else to get to enjoy it. And then we also read Tress. Now, I did listen to the graphic audiobook for this book, and I feel like that was a really good choice because it definitely, like, the whole thing is that it's Princess Bride, and then somebody else is telling the story. I feel like getting to listen to the story in that facet was really fun, and that all of the narrations and all the little music in the background just made it very much so feel like Adventure on the High Seas, and, like, this is a fun pirate storytelling, almost not fairy tailing because there's no like fairy tale, but like it's a story, right? I would probably have to give this like a 3.5 if I'm being fully honest with you. I do wish that I had, while I was reading it, look through the actual, what is this, the premium hardcover, because it does have really actually stunning pictures of all the things that are happening. Like, obviously you got a character there, which is, I'm not like the biggest character art person, but she's cute. She's, you know, living her little Viney spore life, captain at the sea, steering the ship, steering her own destiny, taking charge of her destiny. Like, these kind of images are so pretty, and I feel like they do contribute to some of the, maybe not visual aspects, but some of the, oh, that's kind of spoilery, but oh, that is so pretty though. Okay, definitely spoilery, but so pretty on that one. Look at them being all cutesy. I feel like there are definite elements to this story that I thought was really interesting, and I thought the way that he chose to write about things was interesting. Like, you, in particular, at the very beginning, her dad went to a bar situation. It was playing darts with his friends in order to get them to help her. So then it was his turn. He hit the dartboard and he's like, man, I wasn't doing too great. But then the next one I did better because I hit below the dartboard. And you're like, but that's not how that works. But why can't it work this way? Why can't it just be fun and quirky? And I feel like there was a lot of fun and quirky here. I feel like this would have been better as a summertime read. And coming fresh off of a very vibey fall read in the form of an Enchantment of Ravens, definitely, like, I kept wishing for fall books. So I would probably give this like a 3.5. We're going with that. I feel like Brandon Sanderson, I keep waiting for a book that I'm going to absolutely love from him. I've read this, I've read Warbreaker, and I've read the first book in Mistborn, and then I soft DNF'd the second book in Mistborn, and I'm just waiting for that moment to happen. But someday it will. But in either case, I did get this off my physical TBR, and I'm very excited about that. Also, this is so pretty. Okay. And then I did look around my house for the bajillion time, and I have yet to find my copy of The Housemaid by Frida McFadden, but it is somewhere. I ended up listening to this yesterday. Frida McFadden's books, this is now the third Frida McFadden that I've read. Her books just read so quickly, and they're so fun, and just, ooh, what's gonna happen next? I listened to the middle of this book on Saturday, and I was really, really having a great time, and then I listened to the last half of it on Sunday, and I feel like I guessed the plot twist that was gonna happen, and then this morning I definitely guessed where the epilogue was gonna go. While this book wasn't the most surprising necessarily, it was definitely fun. It was giving all the like spooky psychological thriller kind of moments that I wanted in the first half and in the beginning. I feel like thrillers are either really hit or miss. Like, you either really like the ending and it just blows your mind, or you really like the middle and the ending is not so good. I don't feel like I've had as good of luck with thrillers being good the whole way through lately. So if you have any really good thriller recommendations that are both crazy interesting and also kind of blows your mind, let it go down below, because I'm in the mood for them. Because I also listened to The Boyfriend by Freedom McFadden this week, which is definitely not on the physical TBR, but I think I like The Boyfriend better. It very much so gave the vibes of like dating around in New York City, which I read The Arrangement earlier this year, and it was kind of feeling a little bit like that. My brain was guessing a bit more things and like actively trying to think through things a bit more than The Housemaid. Like I feel like The Housemaid I figured out pretty early on, but then The Boyfriend I kept trying to think through a little bit later, and I feel like I had suspected the thing in The Boyfriend, so I wasn't necessarily like aggressively shocked, but I anticipated a little bit less than The Housemaid. But either way, I finally got my fall thriller moment that I have been so desperate to have lately, and I am just like, I'm kind of on a high. I feel like I not only have cleared off some massive space on my shelves, I cleared off some massive space in my mind, and now I feel like I just have full free roaming abilities to get into all of the books that I have really desperately been wanting to get to this fall, and I am just so excited. I feel like I'm finally coming out of my reading slump, and I am just, it's a time to be alive for me at the moment. Anyways, thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed watching me start off this reading challenge that quickly turned into a fairly massive unhaul. Like, I wish I had counted the total number of books that I had unhauled. And I didn't. I might be able to go back and count the number of books and all the clips, but I definitely got rid of a couple things that I didn't even show y'all, which is, I was in a mood, okay? But I was able to actually unhaul those and get them out of my house. I did end up going to Second and Charles, and so I was able to get a little bit of money back. So I'm gonna have to decide how I'm gonna end up spending that store credit, but we've got some new store credit for some new books that I'm very excited to read, and I feel like this week was a success. It started off as a reading challenge. It ended up in, I didn't think I was going to get to actually read 3 books in this video, and I actually ended up doing that. I got to try a chapter essentially for a couple books on my physical TBR, unhauled most of them, and then somehow kind of got myself out of a reading slump. I don't know what that's about, but I'm here for it in either case. Anyways, we'll see how many future installments of reading my physical TBR I could do. I honestly feel so much better about where my physical TBR is at the moment. There are definitely things on my physical TBR that I still want to get to, like the second half of the Red Rising series. Just saying. I have like the 5th season, A City of Brass, and then Empire the Vampire I'm really hopeful to get to. So there's definitely some bigger series that I want to get to that are on my physical TBR that I would like to get to. However, I feel like we got to clear off a good bit of the random bits so that I feel like I have a lot more space, both obviously on my bookshelves, but mostly mentally. And I feel like I have so much more freedom to just kind of mood read around and not feel as guilty for not reading the books on my physical TBR, because the books that I've been staring at right next to my bed every single evening, I've not been touching. So I call this week a success. So I hope this either inspires you to read your own physical TBR or to just get real with yourself with what you're actually going to read versus what you're not going to read, because clearly in my case there was a lot more that I was not going to read than I really had previously reconciled with. Book buying and book reading are generally 2 separate hobbies, and for a while my book buying habits was definitely different than my book reading habits. I was definitely buying some books that I wasn't necessarily interested in reading at the end of the day because I was able to get them for really cheap, and I was like, ooh, a book, have fun. But when was I going to read them? So I'm glad that I was able to clear some of those out of my existence and being. So I hope that if you're someone who also has similar book buying habits or a similar scenario in which you've got books on your physical TBR that you may or may not eventually get to, and if you're kind of thinking, okay, I'll put this off until then, reminder, then happens to be now sometimes. If there are specific books that you've been waiting for the fall to get to, it's fall. I have traditionally been someone who likes a bigger physical TBR and just more options around me at any given time, and I feel like this week would definitely clear out some things. And while I'm not just gonna go buy a whole bunch of books, like, it also kind of feels like it could be fun. It just so happens to be Target's buy 2 get 1 free sale this week, and I'm like having to actively hold myself back at the moment. So let's see how long I do that. Probably not very long. So whether you have a very large physical TBR of books that you have been previously so excited about and then you just haven't quite had time to get to them, and now is the time to get to them, or whether it's books you've been putting off for fall or for a particular season, let this be your sign to actually read through them, because it feels pretty good. Not gonna lie. Anyways, thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you have a great rest of your day or night wherever you are, and I will catch you in the next one.